In this screencast segment, we will be looking at common foods of Africa. You will need an iPad and your student worksheet. The first part of this segment, you will be going through a thing link information, and the second part, you will be following the thing link to do a QR scavenger hunt. The first thing that we need to know is Egypt, although it's on the continent of Africa, it's considered the Middle East. So we're not going to be looking at that today. Most native Africans do not have refrigerators. Therefore, it's necessary for the people who live in a city to go shopping every day to buy the freshest ingredients. They don't want to overbuy because things will spoil easily in the heat. If you live in the rural areas, you're going to be growing, raising, or hunting your own food. Take a few seconds or pause the screencast to answer the question on your notes. How does this differ from the way Americans get their foods? When you're ready, unpause the video. Grains are a staple and the base of the African diet. Sorghum and millet are what people use today in the U.S. as birth seeds, but there they are suited to the dry climate and poor soil, so they make an excellent choice to grow these grains there. They are used for porridges, which is a hot cereal, and for breads also. Maize or corn is another grain that is grown in various regions and ground into flour. Rice is also another staple in regions that are not too dry because they do need water to cultivate them. Herbs and spices are staples for African cooking. They are used for flavor, for tenderizing meats. They are also used as a preservative. Remember, they're not using refrigeration in many areas. Typical spices that they use are cinnamon, cloves, coriander, cumin, garlic, ginger, nutmeg, and parsley. Some common fruits and vegetables are tropical vegetables, things and fruits, things like bananas, papaya, which is a small melon-like fruit that has many seeds, coconuts, which are tropical and indigenous to this area, plantains, they look like a bland banana. They are used as a starch when it is green, and when it's slightly yellow and black, it is used as a fruit. But the plantain does need to be cooked or processed before eating. Mangoes are another popular fruit in this area. They're sweet, they're juicy flesh, and they have a large stone in the center. Cassavas is a starchy root vegetable. It looks like a sweet potato, which is another common tuber or root vegetable in this area. It is a major source of carbohydrates, and it grows very easily in these tropical regions. Okra, which is a native vegetable, it was also brought to the U.S. by the slaves back in the 17 and 1800s. It is also a common ingredient in soul food cooking in Liberia. Yams and sweet potatoes are also staples in this country or continent. African meals. There are two types of meal patterns. If you live in urban areas and you have enough money, you can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and a snack. If you live in a rural area, typically you only eat 2 meals a day, and they are very similar meals. The first one would be midday and then the evening meal. And a typical meal for you would be something like soup or stew and a starchy accompaniment like rice or bread. When they have bread, it is often used as the plate or an eating utensil. They do eat with their hands. Snacks are popular and necessary to help quench the hunger and get the necessary nutrients that you need because they are only eating 2 meals a day. In urban areas, street vendors sell snacks of fried plantains or broiled meats that are readily as takeaway food. Well, if they're only eating 2 or 3 meals a day and some snacks, we need to know how they're getting their nutritional intake or their dietary needs for every day. You can see here, this is one of the typical food guides for the countries of Africa. This is for Benin. As you can see, the bottom layer is things like water, grains, and tubers. Now remember, we said that tubers such as yams and cassavas were processed so that they could be flours, and then they could make their products like breads from that. The next layer are proteins and protein substitutes such as legumes and peanuts. You also have eggs and fish and chicken and your seafood. And then we have the next layer, which is vegetables. And you can see that there are things like cabbages and tomatoes and okra. The next layer would be your fruit and your fruit juices. And you can see there's things like papayas and pineapples, bananas. The smallest layer up here is dairy products. Okay, the last thing that we're going to look at before we go on to our QR scavenger hunt is the typical meal. It begins with hand washing ceremony and it also ends with it. The mother or other female pours water from a jug over the hands. It's just running your hands underneath water. There is no soap involved. Your meal is served at low tables and you use either pillows or rugs or carpets for your seats. The food is served in a brass or earthenware pot that it's been cooked in. And it's usually set in the center of the table so that everyone can either take their portion or they can eat right off of that dish. Typically, the men are served first, and then the women and children. Utensils are usually just a spoon, your hand, or flat breads that are balled up or rolled up, and starchy sides are also used to scoop up the food. When eating, you only use your right hand to eat because the left is considered unclean. Okay, moving on, we have a scavenger hunt. You will need your worksheet for your notes. You also need an iPad and move with your group. What you will do is you will go to and hover over the different countries that I did not go over, and you will read the little blurb that is there, such as African food varies from country to country, similar ingredients in like regions. Guyana has a perfect example. Go to where one would get a drink in the main hall if they were playing hard at gym. Answer the QR code questions for credit. Okay, so you would go to where that clue led you to find the answer. And there will be other questions there to answer also. There will also be another QR code to take you to another country and another section of the school. Remember, you do need to move as a group to answer your questions. When you are completed, return to the room and turn in your worksheets.